The Hayom Yom relates the story how the Rebbe Rashab as a young boy went into his grandfather for a bracha before his birthday, and he cried bitterly over the fact that Hashem appeared to Avraham Avinu and not to him. It's a story that the Rebbe analyzes time and again, this time focused on the question, it's not the first time that Hashem appears to Avraham in the Torah. Why is this the one that was a trigger for the Rebbe Rashab? The Rebbe says that he has regularly shared the story of the Rebbe Marash. Story that happened, the Rebbe Rashab was 4 or 5 years old in the week of Parshas Vayeira. What happened? The Rebbe Rashab went to his grandfather, Tzemach Tzedek, to receive the bracha that he would get on his birthday. And he began to cry bitterly, saying, How come the Eibishter appeared to Avraham Avinu, not to me, not to us? Atem that Tzemach Tzedek geantwortet, famously that Tzemach Tzedek answered him, as Aidat Tzedek, when a Jew who is already at Tzedek, so 99 years and has reached the pinnacle of 99 years of service of Hashem, is machet as darf sich mol sein, and then takes the major resolution that I have to have a bris, is avert as David is also beweisen. Then it's appropriate that David would appear to him. So Sipura Rabbi Bechlal, any story of the Rebbeim, especially those stories that the Rebbeim shared with us with the intention that we should publicize them, must be obviously very, very precise. Even stories that relate to the Rebbeim when they were young, it's also very precise. Is the fact that the Rebbeim shared these stories with us, that the Gemara says from the youngest age you could already tell who a person is going to become, is verstandig. It's not only that the story has a broad lesson for us in how to serve Hashem, because the truth is everything is a lesson in how to serve Hashem. We're supposed to always get lessons from everything that we see, experience, or hear, a lesson in how to serve Hashem. The point is, if a story is given to us in that level of detail in order to publicize the story, it must be that there's specific detail we have to learn that is relevant to our lessons. So, is in dem Sipur nicht verstandig. The question about the story is, Vayeira Avraham station free. This concept that David appeared to Avraham Avinu is mentioned prior to this story in the Torah. In fact, twice in Parshas Lech Lecha. So, was ist gewinnt die Bechir von Rebbe Rashab, was David hat sich bewiesen zu Avraham Avinu und zu uns beweisen sich nicht. So, why is it that what disturbed the Rebbe Rashab, that the Eibishter appeared to Avraham Avinu and not to us, bekershen mit dem Pasuk in Parshas Vayeira und nicht von Parshas Lech Lecha? Why is that a question that only emerges in Parshas Vayeira and not earlier in Parshas Lech Lecha? So, wegen dem zweiten Mal Vayeira Shem Lavram from Parshas Lech Lecha, we could excuse the fact that the Rebbe Rashab didn't pick up on it at that young age, the second time that Hashem appears to Avram in Lech Lecha, because perhaps he hadn't yet learned it. Can man sagen, as the Rebbe Rashab hat doch efsher demot nicht gelernt im Pasuk, could be by that stage the Rebbe Rashab had not yet learnt that pasuk. The pasuk is kimat in siyum hasedra because it's a pasuk that is almost at the end of Parshas Lech Lecha. Vers 40 we gaan met te say dalim mit kinder as we lernt mit ze jede woch nor atel from Parshas Hashavah, because at that young age it's quite common that when we learn the parasha with a young child we only learn a piece of the parasha, and it could be that at that age he hadn't yet gotten to the latter part of the parasha, so maybe he wasn't yet aware of the second reference to Hashem appearing to Avraham Avinu. But the first one, the first time that it says that David appeared to Avraham, that is at the beginning of Parshas Lech Lecha. Surely the Rebbe Rashab had learned that pasuk. Why is that earlier pasuk in Parshas Lech Lecha about Hashem appearing to Avraham Avinu not something that stimulated this bitterness and this crying from the Rebbe Rashab only when he got to Parshas Vayeira? Okay, so we'll answer the question by saying it's when he went into the Tzemach Tzedek. Maybe that's the answer. It was contextual. But Pashas Yeshlem in dem time, when the Rebbe Rashab went into the Tzemach Tzedek, to get his birthday bracha, is es given b'Shabbos Parshas Vayeira. That was the week of Vayeira. After the Rebbe gefragt, if the minion was had gelernt, then also therefore his reference was what he was learning at the time, which is Parshas Vayeira. Of Vayeira elav Abai v'shtein Parshas Vayeira, and his question was about the Eibishter appearing to Avraham Avinu in that parsha. Mashenkin devach von Parshas Lech Lecha is nicht given as Sibay Farain zum Tzemach Tzedek, whereas in the previous week he didn't necessarily have a reason to go see the Tzemach Tzedek and therefore to raise the question. Okay, it's not an amazing answer because we also have a Sikha where the Frierdiker Rebbe says that the Rebbe Rashab as a child would go to the Tzemach Tzedek on a regular basis, not only when he was receiving the bracha for his birthday. But even if we went with that, the question is, from Parshas Vayeira. So sure, the Rebbe Rashab might have only made reference to the pasuk that was relevant in that parsha, but the Tzemach Tzedek in his response should have addressed the other times that Hashem appears to Avraham as well. How come the Tzemach Tzedek did not mention the fact that there are two other occasions prior to this one where Hashem appears to Avraham and they're in Parshas Lech Lecha? Now the Yishai is noch aggressor. The question is even stronger than we thought. The answer from Tzemach Tzedek, the Tzemach Tzedek's response, as the Eibishter hat sich bewiesen zu Avraham, Avinu, weil hat machlich gewesen, als darf sich mal sein, that the reason that Hashem appeared to Avraham Avinu was because he made a decision that he's going to have a bris. Actually only explains why Hashem appeared to Avraham Avinu in our parasha, because that is at the time of the bris. Because our parasha is after Avraham Avinu's commitment to have a bris. Es bleibt aber die Scheilung gewähnt, wenn Vayeira Hashem al Avraham von Parshas Lech, was seine gewähnt, hat sich mal gewähnt. But what about the times that Hashem appeared to Avraham Avinu, which surely is a reason to be upset that he's not appearing to us, which the Rebbe Rashab is bothered by, which happened before he made the commitment to a bris. So the Tzemach Tzedek doesn't even address that. Okay. So maybe we can answer a different way and say, well, what's unique about this parasha is that the revelation of Hashem is not tethered to an instruction. Let's explain this way. The two times that Hashem appears to Avraham Avinu in Parshas Lech Lecha, the appearance is an introduction to a conversation. Vayeira havaya gomer, vayomer gomer. They appeared and said, Vayeira. Hat nicht der Wort Vayeira, hat nicht kein Ort der Vayeira zu einem, so welches ist nicht die Amira. So, if the Eibush is appearing to Avraham Avinu because he has to tell him an instruction, then I, who am not getting an instruction from Hashem, cannot complain, why has Hashem not appeared to me? Whereas in our parsha, it's Vayeira that the Eibush appears, and there's no instruction or discussion that follows. Der Vayeira is given an for sich. The Vayeira appears to be a standalone event of divine revelation, and therefore, hat sich der Rebbe nicht voneinander gewähnt, dafke bekershet zu dem Vayeira. Maybe that's why the Rebbe Rashab is only crying now, because he could justify the Eibishter appearing to Avraham and not him in the previous parasha, because the Eibishter has to tell Avraham an important instruction. What about me? In this parasha, Hashem appears to Avraham. Stam, why doesn't he appear to me? But it's also not a good enough answer. There's two reasons. First of all, let's go with that argument that Vayeira is in order to give an instruction. You know how many places are in the Torah where the Eibush just speaks to somebody and the Torah does not precede it by saying, and he first appeared to that person? Is the fun mashma, as ich do is the Vayeira in atzmai, which implies that here that the Torah emphasizes that Hashem appears to Avraham before he speaks to him, implies that the appearance is something unique and special, not just to facilitate a conversation. And if that's the case, we go back to our original question. So why isn't the earlier Vayeira something that stimulates the Rebbe Rashab's upset? But besides that is noisef lozeh. The reason that the Eibishter appears in this parasha to Avraham Avinu is also for a unique reason which wouldn't apply to the Rebbe Rashab. There was a specific objective, as Rashi, who is the simplest interpretation of the pasuk, tells us, that the Eibishter appeared to visit Avraham Avinu while he was sick. The Rebbe Rashab wasn't sick. So why would he expect the appearance of the Eibishter to him? Let's try something else. The Balaturim says the reason that the Eibishter appeared was because Avraham Avinu earned it by having a bris. In Balaturim state, as Vayeira Rabbi Parashat is given b'shvil Mila. Why did the Eibishter appear? Because Avraham Avinu had a bris. In Schus was Avraham Avinu hat mekayim given mitzvahs Mila, because Avraham Avinu fulfilled the mitzvah of having a bris. Therefore, he deserved to have the Eibishter appear to him. Perhaps that would give us an explanation why now is when the Rebbe Rashab gets upset that the Eibishter hasn't appeared. As in that was the Rebbe Rashab's complaint. He also has a bris. So if Avraham Avinu has a visit from Hashem because he has a bris, I should also have a visit from Hashem because I have a bris. And then we'd understand the Tzemach Tzedek's response, which is you can't compare the two types of bris. And we can't compare ourselves to Avraham because Avraham Avinu's type of bris milah was exceptional. It was a commitment made at 99 years old. Which is why only Avraham Avinu deserves this great divine revelation and not the rest of us. Okay, so then the whole story makes sense. The Rebbe Rashab saying, I have a bris too, where's Hashem for me? And the Tzemach Tzedek says you don't have a bris in the same way as Avraham Avinu. Sounds great, but it's got two problems. There are two reasons why this is a really difficult explanation to offer. Firstly, Aleph Rashi is meforish kenal as the Vayeira of Avaya is given its stam aschabish v'lamilen or levakir esachila. Rashi, who is the kind of interpretation that the Rebbe Rashab at his age would be exposed to, the simplest explanation says not that the Eibishter came to Avraham Avinu because of his bris, but rather to visit the sick. That's information that's relevant to a 5-year-old is mistaver as the Shishler von Rebbe Nishma sein de Gakin von 4 oder 5 Jahre. So you'd expect that the Rebbe Rashab's question at that tender age of 4 or 5 years old is eiskalt and the Pirush Rashi from Pasuk would fit with Rashi, not the Balaturim's explanation. Balaturim he'll get to when he's older. So it's unlikely that the Rebbe Rashab was asking his question based on the Balaturim's interpretation. And secondly, base. From Balaturim. Even if you do go with the Balaturim's explanation that he deserved the revelation because of the bris, we're talking about the Rebbe Rashab, not an ordinary child. You could already see his prodigious nature at this age. As the Gemara says. You can tell from the youngest age who people are going to grow to become. Obviously, he appreciated that Avraham Avinu is way greater than the rest of us. And he surely appreciated the tremendous sacrifice of Avraham Avinu's bris at 99 years old, which is altogether different from a regular bris of a baby who doesn't really have a say in the matter. Was he is given in Elter for 99 secure because he did it at 99 years old. There is no way that we could suggest that that the Rebbe Rashab was thinking that he is comparable to Avraham Avinu and therefore has the question. To the extent that not only does he have a question, he has a complaint. Why the Eibishter appeared to Avraham Avinu thanks to his bris and not to me thanks to my bris. The explanation is something absolutely different to everything that we've been thinking up until this point. The Taina von Hanal von Rebbe Nishma Seiden is gekommen taka mitzadem, was hat gewusst, was Rashi sagt. Why did the Rebbe Rashab have his question in the first place? Because he was familiar with what Rashi has to say. As Vayeira is given that the Eibishter was coming, so to speak, to visit somebody who is sick. Without Rashi's explanation, the Rebbe Rashab would have known that there's a massive disparity between Avraham Avinu at 99 years old and himself as a child, and he would never have thought that he deserves what Avraham Avinu has. But when Rashi tells us that the reason Hashem is appearing is to visit the sick, that sparks the question in the Rebbe Rashab's mind. Why? But the minute Rashi says that the reason Hashem visited Avraham and appeared to him is to visit the sick, then this is no longer a response to something that Avraham Avinu has done. Rather, it is an expression of the Eibishter's goodness. Rashi's now alerted us to the fact that Hashem appearing to Avraham Avinu is not a response to Avraham's greatness, but rather an expression of the Eibishter's benevolence. That's why the Rebbe Rashab has a question. He's also in pain. Avraham Avinu was in the pain of the bris, and he's in pain over the fact that the Eibishter hasn't revealed himself. You can see he's in pain because he's crying. Therefore, he says, well, if the Eibishter shows kindness to Avraham Avinu in a time of his distress and visits him to alleviate that distress, what about me? I'm in distress. The Eibishter should be kind to me too and reveal himself. Or if he says, find it bepashtos, was hat nicht gefragt, if die zweimal Vayeira Avraham in Pashtos Lech Lecha, and then obviously the Rebbe Rashab had no questions about Hashem appearing to Avraham Avinu earlier in Pashtos Lech Lecha, weil dorten ist der Vayeira given verbunden mit Meilasse shel Avraham Avinu, because both of those cases are the Eibishter revealing himself to Avraham Avinu, because Avraham Avinu is a great person. Man kann sich nicht vergleichen zu Avraham Avinu, and nobody has the chutzpah to say we are comparable to Avraham Avinu, so it's not even a question for the Rebbe Rashab. But now that he knows that the Eibishter reveals himself out of goodness and kindness, why not be good and kind to me? Says the Tzemach Tzedek, it's not that simple. You actually have to create an environment within which you deserve that Gemilas Chesed. Dem hat ihm der Tzemach Tzedek geantwortet, dass idchol ist machlet, dass darf sich mal sein, ist wert, dass der Eibishter soll sich beweisen sein. So the Tzemach Tzedek tells him, well, that's the point. The Avraham Avinu had to earn that Gemilas Chesed. In other words, what he's telling him is, yes, it's true, the fact that the Eibishter revealed himself to Avraham Avinu is not a response to Avraham Avinu's greatness, but rather a kindness shown by Hashem. However, that the individual who's going to receive this great revelation has to make themselves a suitable keli, a suitable recipient of that bracha. How do you make yourself a keli? The keli to them is the achlota, as in welchem matzav zol nor zayin. The keli is this incredible commitment to say, it doesn't matter how advanced I am spiritually. Even if I'm that almost perfect tzaddik, 99 years, 99 levels, I still have to make radical progress in my Yiddishkeit. Now, if then so now we're getting this perception that the Rebbe Rashab believes he deserves to have the Eibishter's revelation, not because he's a great person, but because the Eibishter is a great Eibishter. So there's a question. Safe. Is the Inyan from Bikur Cholim nicht stamayim from Gemilas Chasodim? Who says we could compare visiting the sick, which is what the Eibishter is doing to Avraham Avinu, and the kindness that the Rebbe Rashab would hope to have from the Eibishter to reveal himself? Gemilas Chasodim is a broad concept. Bikur Cholim is quite specific. Bikur Cholim is specific. It relates to somebody who's ill. And durch den Bikur verringert men die Yisurim von dem Chele und das helps zu sein hervor. Visiting somebody who is ill helps, as the Gemara tells us, to take away some of the illness and helps them to heal. Aber fragt, wer steht in Gemara, as es nimmt zu echad mishishim von dem Chele, like the Gemara in Nedarim tells us, that it takes away 1/60 of the illness. Was das afilu bei Bikur von ben Adam, and that's if a human visits a human. And then surely if the Eibishter visits a sick person, it must alleviate a massive element of the illness. So therefore we have a question. How could the Rebbe Rashab derive from the fact that the Eibishter appears to Avraham Avinu to visit him while ill, as the Eibishter beweist sich echt zu dem anderen von Gemilas Chasodim, that he could then extrapolate that the Eibishter would also appear to somebody else for another show of kindness, which is different to Bikur Cholim? Something that isn't tethered to a person who's actually ill and needs to be healed. And by visiting that person, you help their healing. How can you just extrapolate from one to the other? That man das verstehen behackten, was die Gemara lernt ab von Vayeira Vayeira, as Punkt für HaKadosh Baruch Hu Bikur Cholim, afato Bakir Cholim. So the way we'll understand this is through a beautiful insight. The Gemara Sota tells us that what we learn from the fact that Hashem visited Avraham Avinu to visit the sick, we learn from that we should also visit the sick. Which raises a similar question to the one we've just asked. The Gemara sagt, as dafka bei Ben Giloy von dem Chele wird doch sein Bikur Cholim aufgetan als Netel Chol Micholyoy. The Gemara tells us that in order to alleviate some of the illness by visiting somebody, you have to be their peer. You have to be some of the age bracket, some of the, in their peer group. So how could be the instruction for us to visit the sick derive from the fact that the Eibishter visits the sick? Obviously, the Eibishter's visit to the sick is far more powerful than if we're going to visit somebody who is our peer. From that we're going to learn that we have to visit ordinary Jewish people who are ill. What's the link? Rashi resolves that in his explanation here. Because what Rashi is going to tell us is that the Eibishter comes specifically to visit without healing. We normally anticipate that when you visit somebody, that causes some degree of healing. Rashi points out to us that in this scenario, the Eibishter visits Avraham Avinu without healing him. What does he say? That the Eibishter came to visit Avraham Avinu. So he quotes Rabbi Chama bar Rabbi Chanina, who says, by the way, it's the same person who teaches us that we learn from Hashem to visit the sick. So he tells us that it was the third day after the bris, which is the most intense day, and the Eibishter came to ask how he's doing. Why is he telling us that? Why does Rashi have to give us all that information? He already told us that Avraham Avinu was being visited by Hashem because he was sick. Why does he have to add? And the Eibishter came to see how he's doing. Rashi is actually alerting us to a nuance over here that we would never have noticed. The fact that Eibishter came to visit Avraham Avinu as a patient is as need was not with the intention of diminishing some of his illness, but only to inquire after his well-being. What does that mean? So we'll explain now. Because look what happens next. Something about healing happens straight after the Eibishter appears. Noch Vayeira steht, as Avraham hat gesehen, shleisha anoshim nitzavim olav. As soon as the Eibishter appears to Avraham, the next thing the Torah tells us is that Avraham observes three people standing there. Sagt Rashi, so Rashi explains who were these three individuals. They were actually malachim, one of whom was Malach Refoel, coming to heal Avraham. Rashi says that. Balda Saivi, Eich on Vayeira Lavavaya, is Avraham ois geheld geworden in ganzen durch Malach Refoel, und gleich wer es gekommen. So now we know what happens. Without the Eibishter appearing to Avraham Avinu, just the fact that Malach Refoel is dispatched to Avraham Avinu heals him completely. Hat doch nicht genau zu sagen, als mit einer Weile früher soll der Eibishter kommen, bechdeit zarablem von ihm bloisachen mishishim bechol. So if Malach Refoel is coming to heal Avraham Avinu completely, it would be a ludicrous suggestion to say, before Malach Refoel gets there to fully heal Avraham, the Eibishter himself comes to take a portion of his illness away. The Rebbe Rashab medayek. That's why Rashi is very specific to tell us of HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'shoal b'shloima, that the Eibishter came to inquire after him. As the Matorah from the Bikucholim Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu is given nit l'rapos. The intention of Hashem visiting Avraham Avinu, even though it's a visit to the sick, is not to heal him. I'll call upon him echad mishishim even a bit. Now, blois aninu from gemilus chasadim, he's coming to show kindness, to inquire how Avraham Avinu is doing. That is gemilus chasadim, that is ordinary kindness. And that's how we can extrapolate from there that you have to visit every person, because we're not trying to compare ourselves healing somebody through our visit to the Eibishter healing. We're just looking at the kindness aspect of it, which the Eibishter is exhibiting to Avraham Avinu, and we have to exhibit to others. Now that we know that information based on Rashi, which even a 5-year-old would be familiar with, that the Eibishter came to Avraham Avinu as a show of kindness, or not to remove some of the illness. The Rebbe hat der Rebbe nicht verstehen, gehat die Tainas mit Tzadminus Chasodim, darf der Eibishter beweisen sich euch zu Kanal. That's why the Rebbe Rashab could say, so if the Eibishter is extending kindness to Avraham Avinu and therefore revealing himself to him, surely the Eibishter could extend kindness to me too and reveal himself. V'girat HaMobarucha is eine von der Ross, was mit darf herausnehmen von dem Sippur in the Sicher Chelek Tezvav. The Rebbe tells us one of the key lessons that we're supposed to learn from this story is about how to educate children. Seeing as the story occurred with the Rebbe Rashab when he was a young child under the age of 6, which is the age of formal education. That teaches us that even a little child who's still 4 or 5 years old, we are capable of instilling within that child this incredible yearning to want to connect to Hashem and experience godliness through proper education. And it could become such a compelling sense of wanting the Eibishter in their life that they cry at not having it. And that doesn't contradict what the Rambam teaches. But again, and how you incentivize a child when they're still young in education, that you have to present him with opportunities for incentives that he appreciates at his age. Where he says, you read the pasuk and I'll give you the reward of some nuts, etc. Because what happened with this story, and especially once the Frierdiker Rebbe publicized the story, is that it introduced a new methodology of education of children. Not only did it reveal that such a method exists, but it introduced a new method that did not previously exist. As we say in Chassidus, that this opened a new path, a new channel, which previously was not there. What is the channel? What is the objective of real chinuch? Is that in the same way as a typical child is attracted to things like candies or prizes, we can educate children to be attracted to have the Eibishter in their life. And that's what they care about and that's what they love. As we find that there are various things in halacha where we speak about the fact that nature, the human nature has changed over time. Here the human nature of how we educate children has clearly changed. We no longer need extraneous incentives. We can actually incentivize with the Eibishter himself. But we could ask a really simple question. Why now? Why is this capacity to be able to actually appreciate the Eibishter something that was not available in the Rambam's times, but is available now? And so recently as to be a story that happened with the Rebbe Rashab. Well, the answer to that lies in the fact that the exposure of the deepest secrets of Torah is something that's happened only in recent generations. Firstly, durch an Harizal, and then noch durch an Baal Shem Tov, subsequently the Baal Shem Tov, bis in an Eufem von Hasaga V'Abona durch Teres Chassidus Chabad, until eventually the secrets of Torah were presented in the most rational and relatable way through Chassidus. You could say, who are we? How do we deserve this? We're the lowest of the low as spiritual generations go. Is Yadu'ina from the Birim say one of the explanations is as Adra, but that's exactly the reason why. Because we live in such dark times. We need much more light and holiness in our lives. Which is exactly the scenario here. Because of the compelling, overwhelming darkness of our current times. That's why we had to be empowered to be able to educate children in an incredible way, even when they're really young, before formal education. That godliness and holiness should become part of the reality of their lives. And that's why this is a story that specifically unfolded with the Rebbe Rashab. Why the Rebbe Rashab? Because he was a master mechanech. One of the greatest innovations of the Rebbe Rashab was the Chabad Yeshiva system. Where there would be this harmonious learning schedule that includes both the revealed and the esoteric parts of Torah as they complement each other. In order to get to the point of having such a unique revolutionary yeshiva style, you had to first open a unique revolutionary educational style. As I feel when the kid is not alt 4 oder 5 Jahre, to be able to reach a point where even as a child is only 4 or 5 years old, you can motivate and you can instigate within a child this incredible yearning for the Eibishter that he wants nothing more than to have the Eibishter revealed in his life. If we can do this well with our children who are called the Mashiach of Hashem, the anointed, that will hasten the revelation of Mashiach himself. And as Vayeira, when the Eibishter will taka reveal himself, as the pasuk says, that the whole world will be able to observe the revelation of Hashem. It should happen in a real, tangible way. Immediately, when the master who comes as a result of us teaching Chassidus will in fact arrive. That is Mashiach, and Hashem, it should happen immediately.